I should have reported the note immediately. That was the correct procedure. That was what the academy had taught me. Instead, I folded the paper and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Something about it felt wrong. Too simple. Too deliberate. Whoever left it wanted me to know they could reach me whenever they wanted. The next morning, Manhattan woke beneath a blanket of low gray clouds. I arrived at the precinct early and spent 2 hours reviewing everything connected to the warehouse operation. The more I searched, the more questions appeared. Every road seemed to lead back to Adrian Romano. Every answer seemed to disappear before I could reach it. Around noon, I made a decision that probably would have earned me a lecture from every senior officer in the building. I stopped following the file. I started following the man. By 6 o'clock that evening, I was sitting in an unmarked sedan parked across the street from a community center in Brooklyn. According to public records, the building operated entirely on donations from a private foundation, one that somehow connected back to Romano Holdings. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets damp and shining beneath the city lights. I expected expensive cars, private security, powerful businessmen. Instead, I watched families leaving with grocery boxes, elderly residents carrying medical supplies, children running down the sidewalk with backpacks and winter coats. None of it matched the image of a criminal empire. My confusion only deepened when a black SUV quietly pulled up near the entrance. The rear door opened. Adrian Romano stepped out. No cameras, no reporters, no publicity. He greeted an elderly volunteer by name, helped carry supplies into the building, stopped to speak with several residents. One little girl ran toward him holding a drawing. He crouched down and listened as she excitedly explained something about the picture. The feared king of New York's underworld stood there smiling at a child like an ordinary neighbor. I stared through the windshield, wondering if I had somehow driven into the wrong story. For the next hour I observed everything. Nothing looked staged. Nobody seemed intimidated by him. People approached freely. They laughed. They thanked him. They treated him like someone they trusted. Eventually the center closed for the evening. Families disappeared into apartment buildings. Volunteers locked the doors. Adrian walked alone toward the corner of the block. I hesitated only a moment before following him on foot. The distance between us remained about half a block. Close enough to keep him in sight. Far enough to avoid attention. At least that was the plan. Then Adrian stopped walking. My stomach dropped. He never turned around. Never looked back. Yet somehow I knew. He knew I was there. A black town car rolled to the curb beside him. The rear door opened. Adrian glanced briefly toward the darkened storefront across the street where I stood pretending to study my phone. Then he got inside. The vehicle pulled away smoothly and disappeared into traffic. I exhaled slowly. The entire encounter lasted less than 10 seconds. But something about it unsettled me. It felt less like surveillance and more like permission. As I turned to head back toward my car, my phone vibrated. One new message. Unknown sender. No number attached. Just 6 words glowing on the screen. You are following the wrong story, Emma. Rain tapped against the roof of the sedan as I stared through the half-open window. Adrian Romano sat in the back seat looking completely at ease, as though appearing in the exact place I needed him was the most normal thing in the world. The glow from a nearby street lamp caught the sharp angles of his face. How do you know about the note? I asked. He looked almost amused. Because the same people who sent it have been watching you for days. A chill moved through me. Who are they? If I answer that now, you will not believe me. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Most suspects lied. Most powerful men manipulated. Adrian simply watched me with those unsettling blue eyes, as though he already knew every question I was about to ask. You expect me to trust you? I said. No, his answer came instantly. I expect you to trust evidence. For a moment neither of us spoke. Traffic rolled through the wet streets behind me. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed across Manhattan. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a thin manila folder. He held it out through the open window. Take it. I hesitated. Every instinct told me this was a terrible idea. Then I remembered the altered records, the anonymous messages, the missing evidence. Slowly I accepted the folder. What is this? The reason someone wants you distracted. Before I could open it, Adrian glanced toward the abandoned library across the street. His expression changed. The calm confidence disappeared for the first time since I had met him. "You need to leave." My pulse quickened. "Why?" "Because whoever arranged tonight's meeting expected you to arrive alone." I followed his gaze. At first I saw nothing unusual. Then I noticed movement behind one of the dark windows on the second floor. A silhouette. Gone almost immediately. My stomach tightened. Adrian noticed my reaction. "Now you understand." The rear door beside him opened. One of his security men stepped out into the rain. "Boss, we should go." Adrian nodded but kept his eyes on me. "Go home, Emma." Hearing my first name from him still felt strange. Too familiar. Too personal. "Open the folder when you are somewhere safe." "Why are you helping me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. For the first time, something unreadable crossed his face. Not amusement. Not calculation. Something heavier. "Because someone should have helped your father years ago." The world seemed to stop. "My father?" Adrian gave a small nod. "Ask yourself why his name keeps appearing in files that were supposed to be sealed." My breath caught. My father had been a police officer. He had died when I was 14. The investigation had called it a traffic accident. Simple. Tragic. Closed. Adrian settled back into the shadows of the car. "You are closer to the truth than you realize." The window rose. The sedan pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the rain-soaked traffic. I stood frozen beneath the street lamp, clutching the folder against my chest. 100 questions raced through my mind, but only one mattered. When I finally opened the folder 30 minutes later in my apartment, the first photograph staring back at me showed my father standing beside a much younger Adrian Romano, and both of them were shaking hands. For the next 48 hours I barely slept. Every answer I uncovered seemed connected to a larger question waiting beneath it. My father's accident. Adrian Romano. Deputy Commissioner Victor Graves. The missing witness statements. The altered records. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle someone had spent 15 years trying to hide. I stopped trusting coincidence. The morning rain had finally given way to clear skies when I returned to the precinct. Sunlight spilled across the city, but nothing felt brighter. If anything, the truth made everything darker. As I entered the building, I noticed conversations stopping when I walked past. Officers who usually greeted me suddenly looked away. The atmosphere had shifted. Whether they knew something or whether paranoia was finally catching up to me, I could not tell. At lunchtime, Detective Harris approached my desk. "Commissioner Graves wants to see you." My heart skipped once. "Why?" Harris shrugged. "You will have to ask him." 10 minutes later, I stood outside Graves' office on the top floor. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass windows behind him. He looked exactly as he always did. Impeccable suit. Perfect posture. Calm authority. The kind of man people trusted automatically. "Officer Carter," he said warmly. "Please sit." I obeyed. "You have been working hard lately." Something about the statement felt less like praise and more like a warning. Graves folded his hands. "I understand you have developed a particular interest in Adrian Romano." There it was. Direct and deliberate. I forced myself to remain calm. "He is an active investigation." Graves smiled slightly. "Some investigations lead nowhere. Smart officers know when to move on." My pulse quickened. The conversation felt eerily familiar. Another version of the anonymous note. "Stop looking into it." Different words. Same message. "Are you ordering me to stop?" I asked. For a brief moment, his expression hardened. Then the friendly smile returned. "I am advising you to focus on your future." The meeting ended. 5 minutes later. Nothing overt. Nothing illegal. Yet I walked out more convinced than ever that something was wrong. That evening, I found myself standing once again beside the East River. The city lights shimmered across the water like scattered diamonds. A cold wind carried the scent of rain. My phone vibrated. One message. "Unknown sender. Check your locker." I immediately turned around. 40 minutes later, I stood alone in the precinct locker room. Most officers had already gone home. The room felt unusually quiet. I opened my locker. A small flash drive sat on the shelf. No note. No explanation. Just the drive. My hands trembled as I carried it to an empty workstation. The first video file loaded slowly. Security footage. Timestamped 14 years earlier. The image quality was poor, but the faces were clear enough. My father sat across a conference table from Victor Graves. Several other men occupied the room. One of them was Adrian's father. Nobody looked relaxed. Nobody looked friendly. They looked afraid. Then the audio began. The first words shattered everything I thought I knew. My father leaned forward and said, "If we do not expose them now, they will take control of the entire department." The recording ended after 12 minutes, but I remained frozen in front of the monitor long after the screen went dark. My father's voice echoed in my head. If we do not expose them now, they will take control of the entire department. 14 years earlier, he had already seen what was happening. 14 years earlier, he had already known the danger. And somehow, every road led back to the same names. Victor Graves. Adrian Romano's family. My father. The next morning, I made the hardest decision of my career. I called Adrian Romano. The number had been hidden inside the folder he gave me. It rang once. Twice. Then his familiar voice answered. I was wondering how long it would take. I stared out the window of my apartment at the Manhattan skyline. You knew about the recording. Yes. You knew about my father. A pause. Yes. For the first time since this began, I was not angry. I was tired. Tired of secrets. Tired of half-truths. Tired of chasing shadows. Tell me everything. An hour later, I sat across from Adrian inside a quiet restaurant that had not yet opened for lunch. No security teams. No expensive displays of power. Just two people sitting at a corner table while sunlight filtered through the windows. Adrian told me about the alliance my father had formed years ago. About the investigation they built together. About the evidence that disappeared. About the people who rose through the ranks while honest officers were pushed aside. Your father wanted to expose all of them, Adrian said quietly. He believed the system could still be saved. I swallowed hard. And you? Adrian looked down for a moment before meeting my eyes. I never stopped trying to finish what he started. For the first time, I understood the man sitting across from me. Not the rumors. Not the headlines. Not the myth. The real man. The one who spent years carrying a burden that should never have belonged to him alone. 3 days later, everything changed. Federal investigators arrived with evidence gathered from multiple sources. Internal reviews were launched. Hidden records resurfaced. Witnesses who had stayed silent for years finally came forward. The truth spread faster than anyone expected. Careers ended. Investigations reopened. Questions that had been buried for over a decade finally reached daylight. Through it all, Adrian remained exactly who he had always been. Calm. Patient. Unwilling to take credit for any of it. On a cool autumn evening, weeks after the storm had finally passed, I stood beside the East River watching the city lights shimmer across the water. Adrian joined me without saying a word. We stood there in comfortable silence. The city felt different now. Not perfect, but better. More honest. After a while I smiled. You know something funny? Adrian raised an eyebrow. What? I looked at him and laughed softly. The first assignment of my career was supposed to be arresting you. For the first time, a genuine smile appeared on his face. And how did that work out? I glanced at the skyline, then back at him. Turns out I was chasing the wrong suspect. The wind carried the sound of distant traffic. Across the river. The city moved forward. So did we. And for the first time in a very long time, the future felt brighter than the past.